What's cracking, guys? Omar Isaf here, back with another video. In this video today, I want to talk about probably the most common issue I see when it comes to training shoulders. You got to keep in mind that a lot of people, when it comes to their front deltoid, they train it a lot, very often. The bench press, the overhead press, even sometimes doing front raises. I remember there was a study, they took a look at muscle size of the front delt, the lateral delt, and the rear deltoid compared to trained individuals compared to sedentary population, and they found that the anterior deltoid was 5 times the size of a regular individual. The lateral deltoid was actually 3 times the size, and then the rear deltoid was only 10 to 15% larger, and that kind of shows the inequity when it comes to shoulder training. The most common issue when it comes to training shoulders is that the rear deltoids don't get enough love. And there's many reasons why the rear deltoid does not get enough love. Probably because at heart, we're bros. We want to bench a lot, we do a lot of overhead press. That anterior deltoid, we take a look at the mirror in terms of how we look, we just train it more often. So it already gets enough love. If you're doing front raises for your anterior deltoid, you probably should stop because it's already getting enough stimulation. You know it's not? That rear deltoid, let's talk about it today. Let's talk about what you should do when it comes to this often neglected, not appreciated muscle. It needs a little bit more love. I'm going to go over 3 movements that you should be incorporating into your training. And this kind of came to me, the concept of this video, when I was looking at my own training, doing all this weightlifting, also doing this bench press program where I'm doing a lot of pressing. Once again, that front deltoid gets a lot of love. I do that Alberto Nunez side kettlebell raise. So once again, the lateral deltoid is getting a lot of love. What am I doing when it comes to the rear deltoid? Not a whole lot, and that needs to change. I need to fix this. So the 3 movements I want to talk about when it comes to training your rear deltoid would be 1, the face pull. I've talked about that a lot before. 2 would definitely be some sort of bent over lateral raise done correctly where we're going to protract the shoulders in order to try and train the rear deltoids effectively. And then lastly, the band pull apart. So 3 different movements. Before I go on, I should also just say, if you care about trying to increase your bench press, if you care about healthy shoulders, you should care about your rear deltoids. They're one of the muscles responsible for external rotation of the shoulder. They have a lot of different functions. So you think about this movement right here, it helps contribute with that. Also, think about your pecs. Big pecs right here. We talk about horizontal adduction, so we're bringing it close together. So like in a fly or even a bench press, it does the same thing. Well, your rear deltoid does the opposite, horizontal abduction, and that's really important. So kind of back like so. That's why you'll see a lot of rear delt machines, like rear delt flies. You see that one where it's the opposite of the chest fly, where you're facing against the pad and you're pulling it apart like so. That does train your rear deltoid. But if you've watched, and I'll link it in the description, the video with my boy Alberto Nunez going over how to train the rear deltoid effectively. 1, a lot of gyms don't have that piece of equipment or it's not set up correctly. There's a large room for error. So I want to talk about 3 things that every single person can do that has access to a proper gym facility in order to train the rear deltoid. The first, like I said before, will be the face pull. The face pull should be one of your bread and butter movements. I have a whole video going over how to do the face pull itself. I'll link that also in the description. But just as you're doing a lot of pressing movements, you're probably doing a lot of overhead pressing, you're probably doing a lot of bench press, you kind of have to even it out. This is one of those movements that is very easy to train an individual. It works a lot of different muscles. It actually also trains your lower traps. It trains a bunch of different things, but your rear deltoid in particular that we want to target. When you do this movement, what you essentially want to focus on is doing a back double bicep pose almost at the end. So we're going to grab it palms facing one another. We're going to pull with the rope, use the rope attachment, set it at eye height or a little bit above where the rope eventually is going to be just above kind of your forehead. And when you pull it all the way back, you're squeezing almost like you're doing, once again, a double bicep pose. But you want to make sure that your elbows are the things that are getting pulled back. You're not yanking it back when it comes to your wrist. So face pull should always be a staple when it comes to your training. A lot of people are probably doing this, but just think, again, your anterior deltoid, 5 times the size of your rear deltoid, so they definitely need more love. Do this, do face pulls 2 to 3 times per week. If you have push sessions, just do it at the end of that. The next one I want to talk about is that bent over lateral raise, but for this, we're actually going to use, not a hack, but a variation where we're going to rest our head on top of some sort of, let's say, seat, where you normally do your seated overhead press, something like that. Every gym has one of these. We're going to rest our head so we don't use excessive momentum. Yes, it is important to train with enough weight so you get a stimulus for that muscle. At the same time, little muscles need even more attention. So you have to focus on that muscle, because if you're not careful, a lot of other things are going to take over. When I say when we bend over that we want to protract a little bit with the shoulder, what I mean, people will tend to have that concept when they do a rear delt fly, that they'll really retract tight, and they'll initiate the movement with retracting their scapula together. So they're bringing their shoulder blades together rather than allowing it actually to roll forward. For rear deltoid movements, in order to target the rear delt effectively, you want to make sure you roll the shoulder a little forward. So we start the movement with the shoulders rolled forward. When it comes to the bent over lateral raise, we put our head on top of a seated apparatus in order to make sure we don't use that momentum. And really, when you do this for higher repetitions, we're talking upwards of 15 reps, you should be feeling that, once again, right back here. If you kind of feel it in your mid-back, that is a good indication that either one, you're initiating with retracting your shoulder blades, that's wrong, or two, you're probably using too much damn momentum. So bent over with the head supported lateral raise would be the second movement that should be a staple in your training 1 to 2 times per week. And then the last one is something that you guys should do just in addition to your bench press in between sets. This is something much like how, and we could get into this, training antagonistic muscles, how doing an overhead press, if you superset a couple pull-ups, it kind of helps fire and activate your lats. Lats, remember, are a key stabilizer for your rectors, for your back, in order to have that strong, stable position. So sometimes movements work hand in hand. I would advocate definitely doing pull-aparts in between doing the bench press. I remember I first think I heard about this years ago from Christian Thibodeau. Got to give a shout out to him. But essentially what this is doing, as you're pressing forward with the bench press, probably what tends to happen, we don't have our shoulders set, we'll actually protract too far forward with the shoulders in general, and that's just the wrong idea. So this concept of doing the band pull apart, the key that I want to talk about here is making sure we don't initiate the movement with retracting the shoulder blades together. Instead, what we want to do, we want to protract them, so we actually want to start with them slightly rounded and then pull it apart. You want to select something like a red band. You see I'm using a red band here. Most gyms, once again, have a red band. If you don't have access, don't worry. I'll link it in the description. Not affiliated, but you should have one of these bands. You want to do a lot of reps. In between every bench press set, do upwards of 20, 25 repetitions per set. So you do a set of bench press, and then you just do some band pull-aparts. What this is going to do, first, it's really good for all the musculature in your back. So it's we're not only talking about your rear deltoids, but we're also talking about the external rotators inside your rotator cuff. We're also talking about kind of that mid-back, the rhomboids, the whole damn thing. But when we start with a protracted position where we're slightly rounded forward and then we pull it apart, we get a little bit more stimulation there. Smaller muscles need more attention to detail. Big muscles, when it comes to your chest, if you do a bench press, in some way, shape, or form, no matter what your technique is, it will target the bench press. The rear delt, on the other hand, if you don't target it, if you're not smart about it, if you're not practicing proper form, it actually can easily get overlooked, and some other muscle group will overcompensate back there. And that's why even when people train the rear deltoids, they're not growing, or they don't grow nearly as much as they should, because it's not getting the love. You got to focus, you got to try and feel the muscle. The 3 different movements I talked about, 3 staples that should be part of your training, because once again, when we take a look at just the average population versus trained individuals, 5 times the size up here, 3 times the size, 10% bigger, only a little bit bigger, and we wonder why there are so many bros that have shoulder issues, especially with all that bench press. Even and out, do face pulls, focus on that external rotation. I've talked about face pulls a lot before. I would say one of the keys for face pulls is, once again, don't use a lot of weight. Focus on getting that double bicep pose, retracting with that scapula at the very end for sure, and pulling it apart. The second one would be the bent over lateral raise when you're, or bent over reverse fly, I should say. The bent over reverse fly, where your head is supported by some sort of piece of equipment, so you're not using momentum. Protract forward, so roll the shoulders forward and then do the movement. And then lastly, band pull-aparts in between sets of the bench press. First, it's just good for the musculature of your shoulder, but also it'll help target, especially if you round forward, you protract, word of the day, protract those shoulders forward, it'll help target the rear delts. Much needed muscle group that need even more love. Anyways, guys, that's all the time we have. I'm probably going to do some of this right now, not even going to lie. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked the video, I'm looking right at you. What the hell are you waiting for? Like the damn video, and I'll be seeing all you guys, my rascals, in that next video. Peace!